we're going to talk about Sadiq Khan and the ULEZ rollout, of course, because it's day 2 today. Already Mark Harper, the Transport Secretary, has said to Sadiq Khan in London as Mayor that you really shouldn't try and impose any fines on day 1 of the rollout, which was yesterday, Tuesday, because nobody really knows what is going on. There's an awful lot of cameras that have been disabled. There's an awful lot of people that are not sure where the zone actually begins or where the signs are that tell you where it begins, because in a lot of cases there are no signs in some of the outer boroughs that have now been added to the internal inside of London first section of the ULEZ zone. So it's basically chaos all over the place. The fightback goes on. There was a bit of scuffling yesterday outside of Downing Street where some people were demonstrating against the ULEZ charges. And so there's a question about should there be grace periods. There's a question about should there be an ability to appeal before an automatic fine is issued. We've already got cases of people fighting back and beating the system and saying the court says you don't have to pay those fines because you never saw a sign that said you would be fined. Whereas the congestion charge sign actually does tell you you have to pay a congestion charge if you are liable for it. Let's talk to Paul Scully, Minister for London, Minister for Tech and Digital Economy, and MP for Sutton and Cheam, of course, as well. Paul, very good morning to you.
Morning to you, Mike. How are you?
Yeah, very well indeed. Thanks for joining us. I think, to be fair to Sadiq Khan, this is kind of rather blown up in his face more than he expected it to. He keeps banging on about how this is going to be great for the clean air of London. He's going to make the air cleaner, but he's not actually stopping people from making the air dirty. He's just charging them to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the whole point. You know, ultimately, if you want to have purely clean air, you ban any car coming into London. That's totally unreasonable. Yeah. Obviously, everything else is a political choice about where you are on the spectrum for it. ULEZ worked in the centre of town originally when it was introduced by Boris a good few years ago now, because there's lots of alternative transport, public transport there, and the situation was worse there. In outer London, if you look at places like Enfield, where there's open green belt land there, you just don't need the same solution. Yeah, let's tackle air quality where it's a problem, but do it in a more bespoke way rather than this sledgehammer to crack it up. Yeah,
well, nobody seems to be able to agree on the quality of the air either, because according to Sadiq Khan, the air inside inner London, where the ULEZ zone was before, you know, yesterday, the only place where it was, he says that's never been better, and his policy has improved the air quality in the centre of London. And I always ask the question, well, if the centre of London air quality is OK, despite the fact that there's loads and loads of cars constantly being jammed up in all of its streets, then surely outside of the centre it must be even better.
Yeah, exactly that, because, you know, I've just been around Sutton just this morning, and people were talking about the fact that they need their car. I've just been to Sutton Women's Centre, and they're hearing from people at the centre who want to keep their daughters safe, their staying, and they need the car to actually go and pick them up and act as we all do as parents, as a taxi service, because the public transport just is not there as an alternative. Funny enough, because the man that's just on your screen at the moment, the Mayor, has cut a whole load of bus services despite talking about the Superloop. And so you've got to be consistent in what he's saying, but that's not his top of his agenda, being consistent, I'm afraid.
Well, it really isn't, is it? And I mean, he keeps sort of pumping out these statistics about 4,000 people a year dying from air pollution. We know that that's not a correct figure, that is a figure that has been kind of, you know, shall we say, summarised, if you like, by some people who say that some of those 4,000 people might have died a little bit later in life if they hadn't been subject to air pollution. But it's not a proven scientific fact by any means.
It's a model. A lot of the figures that he's come up with, he has done the work in his own City Hall office and then paid Imperial College a lot of money.
800,000 quid, I think, isn't it?
To validate those figures. And then Imperial College, another area of Imperial College, have done similar studies and found totally different results. And he's had his deputy mayor try and quash some of the findings and the conclusions. And as you rightly say, these 4,000 figure, it's a statistical model. There are no 4,000 people. It's you and I maybe living a week or two less in our whole lifetime, but being able to actually live in the greatest city in the world and have all the facilities around us, rather than on a desert island with no cars around.
Exactly. And you can't make those kinds of sweeping statements. You know, I mean, if I died next year It might have something to do with the fact I smoked 60 Marlboros a day for about 35 years. You know, I don't do it anymore, but it probably hasn't helped. You know what I mean? You can't suddenly go, oh, he must have been done over that time he walked through Trafalgar Square. You know, the other time, of course, the other thing that he doesn't mention is the quality of air on the tube, which if he really wanted to clean up London, surely he would do something about that.
No, absolutely. Look, there are three things you can do, all of which would be a damn sight cheaper to tackle this. The bespoke nature of tackling air quality in outer London, where it is a problem, looking at particular junctions and air filter systems and those kind of things. Finishing off the zero emission bus fleet, so that's right the way across London, and as you rightly say, addressing the situation of particulates on the underground, because it's all very well sending people on public transport, but then on the underground it's up to 10 times the safe amount on some underground platforms, and that's just simply not good enough. And that's the direct responsibility of this mayor. He's got to take some responsibility. Finally.
He has. I mean, he was saying yesterday as well that this is definitely not about money. He says it's not a cash grab, and his proof of that is that he turned down a request from Grant Shapps to extend the congestion charging zone. What's the truth about all of that?
No, look, what Grant Shapps said, first of all, was he wanted to have proposals, this is back in 2020, proposals to extend the charge for ULEZ and congestion. Proposals, first of all. And he didn't do any proposals, he just suddenly came up with a scheme. He did extend congestion charging. It wasn't in the area. He absolutely, if you remember, he made it 24 hours, 7 days a week for a particular length of time during COVID, which pushed cars back out again. It really hampered the West End of London's recovery from COVID and caused a lot of angst at that time. He bought it immediately without speaking to absolutely anybody. So he did extend congestion charge at that time. This to outer London, this ULEZ extension to outer London, not a word to anybody about it until he suddenly decided he was going to consult on it and bring it in within a few weeks and months.
But it looks as though there's already quite a few legal problems with this particular rollout of the extended zone anyway, because there are no signs apparently in an awful lot of the boroughs. I don't know what it's like down in Sutton, but I know we spoke to the leader of Bromley Council the other day, and we've spoken to the people in Harrow, and a lot of places like that, which are part of the new zone, haven't got signs up. And according to the courts anyway, if there isn't a sign, and if there isn't a sign that says there is a possibility that you'll be fined, then the fines are not enforceable.
Yeah, because look, we are talking about this all the time, but if you are coming in from outside London, we're not having those conversations just aren't been had. So you will be caught unbeknownst to you if you don't have any signs around. So I'm not a lawyer, you need to get legal advice if that is happening to you, clearly. But the only sign I've seen this morning was a sticker on one of the traffic lights saying ULEZ spy camera with an arrow pointing above to the ULEZ camera that someone's obviously upset punter has obviously put on there.
Right. Well, I mean, Ian Duncan Smith's come out and said that he backs the Blade Runners, so, I mean, that could be a big movement for the Tory party. If you want to go and join him, be my guest.
Yeah, I'm not going to encourage that sort of vandalism, but I do encourage people to actually make their voice heard. You know, I went to speak to those people at Downing Street. I happened to be up in London yesterday, went to see them, and I've seen them being written off by some people as only a couple of hundred people outside Downing Street. There were people in Sutton, there were people right the way around London that were venting their continued fury because they are really struggling. The lowest
they really
paid,
are.
small
Absolutely
businesses,
right.
charities, all suffering as a result.
And also, it's a very unclear system. You can't tell, as I said earlier, where it starts. And if you live in one of those parts of outer London, which is very rural and quite green, because a lot of it is, you know, you won't know which road is inside it and which road isn't, because they haven't put it clearly enough on the signage.
And if you come to the Royal Marsden down my way, there's obviously the Chelsea campus. There's one in Sutton as well. If you're getting treated and you're from outside London, you literally just 100 yards or so into the ULEZ zone, and you're going to get charged £12.50 either for yourself to have treatment or for your family. And look, you're right, in these green areas, you need a different solution, not this sledgehammer to crack a nut. You know, ULEZ worked in the centre, as I say, and everyone says, oh, well, this is Boris's plan. But that's like sort of saying about radiotherapy is good, let's just use it everywhere. You use radiotherapy on cancerous cells, you don't use it on non-cancerous cells. You don't use it in a healthy body. Similarly, you use ULEZ where there is a problem, in outer London, where it's less of a problem, and in many areas, minimal problem, you need a different solution.
Exactly right. Let's talk a bit about the Notting Hill Carnival. I just had a fascinating conversation with Palm Sandhu, former Metropolitan Police detective, who basically said, well, look, if you bought a house in Notting Hill, you should just expect it to be terrible on Monday, bank holiday on August, when you have the carnival, because you knew what you were getting into. People have really, really worked up about what she said. I'm basically suggesting that the noise levels, the danger now, the damage being done, the vandalism, the horrible use of sort of public streets as toilets, the fact that 308 arrests were made, including for sexual offences, 57 police officers were attacked, some were kicked, punched, one was sexually assaulted, 8 stabbings. Surely it's time to call the whole thing off, isn't it?
Well, I'm not sure about calling it off. I think it's clearly outgrown the area. I think that's what police are saying. That's what everyone else is saying. It's really difficult to police because of those residential streets. I think what the organisers should be doing is sitting down with the police and say, is there another venue that we can move this to? If not, then it clearly does need to be reviewed, because you cannot just have people.
But it's called a carnival, right? It's not called let's get lawless for the day. If it was, you might then have an argument to say, well, we all knew what we expected. It's meant to be a carnival. It's not meant to be full of people wielding machetes and stabbing each other.
No, absolutely, and that's why if you had it in a park, say, or a wider area, a more open area, it can be better policed, so you can get those machetes off the streets, which should not be there. They are illegal. You can get up to 4 years imprisonment just for carrying one of those things. We've actually doubling down on the making sure we're closing the loopholes to having zombie knives and machetes and those kind of things. But it is already illegal to have many of those knives on the street. 4 years imprisonment.
Yeah. Well, so how come so many people have got them then?
Well, I think this is the problem, because it's it's clearly difficult for the police to be, as you've just seen from those pictures, to be chasing them through those crowds, through those streets, especially when they're on horseback there. Let's look at, with the police, where that carnival maybe goes, so you can actually concentrate on the good things of that carnival, not and remove that lawlessness.
Yeah. Well, maybe just cancel Mondays, because Monday seems to be the day they have all the trouble, and you have it on Sunday when it's family day, and then don't do it on Monday. How about that?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, as I say, I think the police will be the best people to decide that.
Well, they now say the Police Federation is saying they dread policing the event now.
Yeah, absolutely. Because of course you're getting it's a wider thing around crime as well. Because I know a load of officers from Sutton were abstracted to go up to police the Notting Hill Carnival as well, which actually then leaves holes here where I'm sitting at the moment in Sutton Town Centre. Yeah. So it does affect the whole of London when you're concentrating everything into some streets which are far too small for that kind of carnival.
Yeah, exactly right. Paul, thanks very much indeed. Paul Scully, MP, Minister for Tech and Digital Economy and MP for Sutton and Cheam. He doesn't want to cancel it either. I'm going to find somebody eventually who agrees with me that Notting Hill Carnival, certainly on a Monday, should be shut down, just put into the bin and locked away for good, because it's too dangerous, it's too lawless, and quite frankly, people don't want it anymore. Because I would be astonished if anybody says to me, oh yeah, we love it on a Monday when the rampaging begins and the stabbing starts. We really like that. We love watching the police get beaten to a pulp. We really like watching people getting sexually assaulted and other people defecating in the front gardens of people that live there, because after all, they deserve it, don't they? If you buy a house in Notting Hill, of course you should expect that. What's that out there, mummy? Oh, that's just somebody taking a dump. What, in the front garden? Yeah, it's carnival. It's great, isn't it? Wonderful, fantastic. A celebration. This is TalkTV.